Yes, 911.
It's Paul Conroy. You have to help me. I can't breathe.
Okay.
Taphephobia refers to the fear of being buried alive. Out of all phobias, this one can hardly be called irrational. While this fear may not be grounded in reality today, or at least not to such a high extent, instances of being buried alive were more frequent in the past. In the absence of advanced medical technology and morgues, methods to confirm death varied from pinching to burning. Even these methods were not foolproof, as sometimes the individual had merely fallen into a coma or was paralyzed. It was not until 1846 that a French physician, named Eugène Bouchut, proposed the use of the newly invented stethoscope to detect a heartbeat, thereby providing a more reliable way to confirm death. During the 18th and 19th centuries, cholera epidemics and bacterial infections causing severe diarrhea and dehydration were widespread. These outbreaks not only made the affected communities extremely sick but also instilled a deep fear of premature burial. To alleviate this fear, creative engineering solutions were developed during this period. One such innovation was so-called safety coffin, designed to give its occupants a chance to escape their burial and signal to those above ground that they were still alive. These coffins often featured comfortable cotton padding, feeding tubes, complex cord systems connected to bells, and escape hatches. However, most couldn't provide the key component to staying alive, an actual air. In 1791, a man from Manchester, Robert Robinson, was buried in an early version of a safety coffin. Robinson was interred in a mausoleum equipped with a special door that could be opened from the outside by a guard. His coffin contained a removable glass panel. Before his death, Robinson had instructed his family to periodically inspect the glass in the coffin. If condensation from his breath was visible on the glass, he was to be immediately exhumed. The first documented safety coffin, however, was for Duke Ferdinand of Brunswick, who died in 1792. His coffin featured an air tube, a lock on the coffin lid that matched keys he kept in his pocket, and a window to let in light. In 1892, Dr. Johann Gottfried Taberger introduced the bell system. Bells located above ground were linked to strings attached to the deceased's head, hands, and feet. If the bell rang, the cemetery guard would insert a tube into the coffin and pump air using bellows, until the individual could be safely removed from their grave. However, the natural decay process could cause a swelling corpse to trigger the bell system, leading to false alarms that the buried person was alive. Despite its widespread use, there is no record of a safety coffin ever saving anyone. Many historical burial customs have resurfaced in the form of current fables and idioms. Some experts believe that the phrase "saved by the bell" originated from the use of safety coffins. Given everything, taphephobia is still a valid fear, as many years later, there were still cases of this kind. Even with much more advanced medicine, we get a mysterious pseudo-death happening to this day. Here are a few more cases of it. Octavia Smith Hatcher, a resident of Pikeville, Kentucky, was plunged into a deep depression following the death of her infant son in 1891. This led to her falling into a coma. On May 2nd, she was declared dead due to unidentified reasons. Given the lack of embalming practices and the unusually high temperatures that summer, Octavia was hastily buried. But it was discovered that similar illness afflicted many other people in the town, causing them to lapse into comas. However, these individuals would eventually regain consciousness, haunted by the possibility that his wife might have been buried alive. James Hatcher, Octavia's husband, decided to exhume her coffin. The shocking picture he witnessed confirmed his worst fears. The coffin's lining was shredded, the glass above it was shattered and strewn over Octavia's remains. Her nails were bloody and broken, and her face bore an expression of sheer terror. Octavia was laid to rest once more, and James erected a lifelike monument over her grave, which remains to this day. This harrowing experience reportedly led to James developing an intense fear of premature burial. And who wouldn't? His fear of being buried alive was so profound that he had his own casket specially designed. It was equipped with a latch on the inside and had to be sealed with a unique tool that would be removed when the body was consigned to the grave. This casket was later displayed in the hotel lobby in Pikeville, Kentucky, which he had built. In February 1884, Anna Hockwell, while attending her brother's wedding, unexpectedly succumbed to what was diagnosed as a sympathetic palpitation of the heart. A doctor was promptly called to the scene and declared her dead. Anna was quickly interred. However, doubts about her death began to surface among her friends. When her family decided to exhume her grave, they were met with a horrifying sight. Anna's body was found turned over, her fingers gnawed to the bone, and clumps of hair in her hands. It was a chilling confirmation that Anna had been subjected to the unimaginable horror of premature burial. The unfortunate incident of her premature burial created quite a sensation in her town. Her tragic story serves as a reminder of the medical limitations of the time and the horrifying possibility of being buried alive. In 1937, a 19-year-old Frenchman named Angelo Hayes decided to go for a motorcycle ride. He crashed his bike and collided headfirst into a brick wall. When rescuers arrived, Hayes' head was severely disfigured and he had no detectable pulse. His condition was so grave that his parents were prevented from seeing him. He was pronounced dead and buried 3 days later. In the nearby city of Bordeaux, an insurance company grew suspicious. When they learned that Angelo's father had recently insured his son's life for 200,000 francs, an investigator decided to exhume Angelo's body 2 days after the funeral, and was shocked to find that the body was still warm. It is theorized that Angelo survived because his body had entered a deep coma that required minimal oxygen. In a miraculous turn of events, Angelo fully recovered and even became a kind of famous. With several appearances on TV, he capitalized on his traumatizing experience by inventing a security coffin equipped with a toilet, which you'll need if you ever wake up being buried alive, food locker, and a radio transmitter. It also included a library, perhaps for passing time while waiting for rescuers. Although, it is not clear whether there were any kind of light present. Thinking about it, he must have included Premature Burial by Edgar Allan Poe in his library, right? How wild would that be? Talking about having chill time underground, that coffin just sounds like a vacation cabin for introverts, away from dreadful society. Of course, the experience of this sort isn't a joke, and for someone with claustrophobia or desire to live, even more so. Angelo showcased this invention at a fair in 1974, where he survived being buried underground for 30 hours. In the end, he lived a long life and passed away in 2008 at the age of 90. Looking back at the 2010 film Buried near the end, when the realization hits Ryan Reynolds' character, and having all that hope till the last moment, you can't help but think, is that how it was for those people? Did they have any hope, or was it just sheer terror and panic from beginning till the end? They didn't have anyone on the phone to tell them someone's coming to save them. The absolute horror of the situation must have hit them like an avalanche. Now, there are many people such as escape artists or magicians are attempting the buried alive stunts, although some are ending tragically. It comes down to amateurs as well. Even Mr. Beast had done that, spending 7 days in a coffin, perhaps the least fun challenge. Not all of them using coffins too, just plain soil on top of their body. Despite of all the failed attempts, it still doesn't stop people from doing it. Something about people being buried underground is just so fascinating to some, which is making this particular trick popular to this day. After all, it's all fun and games until it's not.